Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, Shrove Tuesday. Are you shriving? I had to look that up again. I remember having done that a couple of years ago to make sure I knew exactly what the Shrove thing was all about. And I hope you're all shriving like crazy, if that's the sort of thing that you're into for this holiday. Mardi Gras, for those of you who are into other stuff. It's a big day around the world as people celebrate all kinds of interesting and crazy traditions, some of which are really fun and some of which are really delicious, as it turns out. It is Pączki Day as well. That's how Shrove Tuesday is marked in Poland and Polish American, and I assume Polish Chilean and Polish Egyptian, if there are such population communities as well. So, congratulations to the Polish people for bringing us the pączki, delicious jelly donut, which, I made the excuse last night. They look so good, and I've been eyeing them for like 10 years on the supermarket shelves and saying, why don't I allow myself to have some of these things? I know they're not good for you, and it's extra calories you don't need, but why not taste it so that when you do, you say, it tastes like a jelly donut, and then next year you won't be driving yourself crazy. So next year we'll look for something else, Fastnacht or something, and see what other delicious traditions are available for us to explore. But the pączki gets a thumbs up, you can't go wrong with the jelly donut. So that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. I actually enjoyed thumbing through some pictures. It was really interesting taking a look at different carnival traditions from around the world. We all, I think, know about, the famous, of course, Mardi Gras, the Mardi Gras carnival in New Orleans, and everybody kind of knows about that. And, I don't know if I know any more than anybody else about the background of that. We know about the carnival celebrations in Brazil, in Rio, fabulous ornate parties and parades and floats and dancers and costumes, etc. And not unfamiliar elsewhere around the world, but a different kind of tradition. But what was really interesting was I was looking at some sort of like Germanic, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Northern Italy, some Central European carnival traditions. And it was really interesting as I was looking at them, and just their super ancient, pagan adjacent costumes that are really ornate and interesting and fabulous to look at. I'm just surprised that it's not, that I wasn't, exposed to it in just absorbing it in popular culture or television shows or commercials for that matter. All these years, they show the pictures of Rio and of New Orleans and stuff, but not of some of these Central European things. But they're a little creepy. The costumes are a little weird, and I suppose if you're used to them culturally, they're less weird. But in the haunted clown doll sort of way, that kind of creepy. But it struck me, it was so interesting that a lot of the people who probably participate in these carnival rituals, recognizing, of course, their familiarity, seeing these costumes year after year, that probably doesn't strike them. But like I said, they are pretty pagan adjacent in many cases, which, doesn't bother me any, but I suppose that would bother some people. But, and over the years, they've been Christianized to some extent, or being, I'm sure, given a more Christian explanation for what they're doing there. But they seem pretty, like I said, pagan adjacent. But in addition, I'm wondering whether, some of the sophisticated Europeans who celebrate at such carnivals view, for instance, tribal masks and costumes and dances and rituals from South America, Africa, Australia, wherever they have indigenous populations. North America, of course, we have an indigenous population. They didn't come immediately to mind, but a lot of the things were a little more evocative of Southern indigenous peoples, but northern indigenous peoples have their own costuming and masking rituals as well, and so do Europeans. And I kind of wondered whether these Europeans thought of the southern and indigenous costuming and dance rituals as primitive in some respect, and never gave a thought to how primitive the pagan adjacent costuming and dancing and ritualizing looks to the outsider. Of course, the indigenous people may not be quite as judgmental of them in that respect. But of course, I guess if they hear first, hey, these people think you're primitive and your rituals are weird and funny, then they might just think the same. But take a look if you get a chance. I mean, on Wikipedia, there were some really interesting photos from, I don't know, some German-Swiss border town that I'll see if I can figure it out and point you to it exactly. But I got to it through the Pączki article, in case you were wondering how I got there, and was just reading about that and different Shrove Tuesday and carnival traditions, and clicked through a couple of places, and, there's no chance I'm going to remember the name of the region, but maybe I'll click through during one of the breaks or find it and hand it over to Scott. But it was just sort of an interesting, it'd be a great anthropological question, or show some of the costumes without identification to anthropology students and ask them where they think this is going on. Although if you're giving them to college level anthropology students, they probably know, but maybe high school or younger. An interesting lesson. Anyway, not what I came here to do today necessarily, but don't worry, we'll get to all of that. It is, of course, Tuesday, whether you're shriving or not, and that usually means we'll hear from Joan McCarter around the 10:30 mark. We do tend to run into problems with it and days, Tuesdays, which follow federal holiday Mondays, because you tend to forget that today isn't Monday if you weren't at work yesterday, but I think she kind of was at work yesterday, because that's the sort of those are the sort of people that work for Daily Kos. It doesn't matter to them that it's a federal holiday. Yes, they're happy for their labor friends who are not at work that day, but they're covering the news nonetheless. And anyway, so here's the sort of news that they were covering. I mean, I guess it would be a wise idea for us to start with Daily Kos coverage of something we only briefly mentioned yesterday, just by way of catching up on the weird news that's been exposed by the Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit against Fox News. I think probably, way back in the middle of last week, I probably put aside, there's a collection of articles we could read about it. Maybe we'll just read some of them in part, but then I want to get back around to, or maybe I should start with the Daily Kos coverage of this story and just sort of skip the original news breaking story from the New York Times from a couple of days ago, and instead take a look at, let's see, I've got two pieces from Daily Kos, one from Jen Hayden and one from Laura Clausen. Or is it from Jen Hayden now I'm thinking, I'll click all the way through because I'm looking at it in Pocket, and sometimes it misattributes the authorship. And then I was thinking, I thought I had one of these from Hunter at some point, but maybe I put something else aside from Hunter. Anyway, so let's see. Laura Clausen's piece, I think, might be the place to start. Dominion has Fox News by the throat. Of course, you all know the background by now. Dominion Voting Systems suing Fox News for defamation for airing repeatedly the story airing pieces wherein lunatics like the former president, TFG, former guy Donald Trump, were allowed airtime to say things like not only that the election was stolen from him and rigged, but that it had been Dominion Voting Systems machinery in particular that had been used in some fashion to do it, which of course was not true, and Dominion was interested in proving that it wasn't. So let's see. Laura's take on this thing. The biggest names at Fox News are a pack of liars. That's not new information, but there is new information to support that point, thanks to a filing in the defamation lawsuit against Fox News brought by Dominion Voting Systems. Winning a defamation lawsuit against a news network requires meeting an extremely high standard of proof, but this is about as strong a case as you can imagine. Dominion has pages of internal communications between top Fox News personalities and executives showing that they knew what they were doing. Dominion's case is so strong, in fact, that the new filing is a motion for summary judgment on liability in its $1.6 billion lawsuit against Fox News. And she helpfully explains here, a summary judgment on liability would not settle the question of damages. But for those of you not versed, I guess, in the lingo, summary judgment, that's basically when your case is so strong that you submit it to the judge directly for judgment without even bothering with going to trial in front of a jury, with the understanding that the judge will be able to take your pleadings and then essentially assume the viewpoint and validity of the defendant's defenses that are offered in the briefings before trial as valid, as, you know, take them at face value, assume them to be true. Given that position, is there any way that if there's no way that the defendant's defenses can absolve them of liability, then they don't even bother going to trial, right? Summary judgment, in other words, is we think this case is so strong on the pleadings alone that we don't need to go through the presentation of evidence and examination of witnesses. The defendant can't possibly offer any sort of viable defense to what we're alleging, given these facts. Assume anything you want and assume everything in favor of the defendant, but there's no legal defense to this. And if you find that's the case, Judge, then why bother with a trial and why bother pestering a jury with all of this? Just rule for, find it for us that summary judgment instead. Well, that evidence is an extraordinary confidence in your case, and it's only more surprising given, as Laura points out, the higher standard, the standard of proof that you have to meet when suing a news network, which they're not, which is another topic for today as well, but we'll get to that. But suing someone who calls themselves a news network for defamation. So they really have to be super confident in their case. There's no skin off your nose. If you move for summary judgment and lose at summary judgment, it doesn't mean, it's not an either or. You just go to trial at that point. So there's no reason not to try. But, if you don't have a reasonable shot at it, most judges just kind of get annoyed at the extra work. So anyway, they have to be fairly confident in their case. Summary judge, I should have known Laura was just going to go ahead and explain this afterwards, and she probably did so in more coherent fashion. She writes, so I should have scrolled a little further down. Summary judgment involves one party in civil litigation asking a judge to rule based on evidence and material facts that a trial is not needed. It's almost always the defendant asking for summary judgment, and that's actually quite true. Usually the defendant says, look, I've read the complaint, and the plaintiff doesn't state a case that can be, relieved in any way, or doesn't prove anything close to liability on my part. Go look at their pleadings and assume all you want in their favor. There's no way they can find me liable, so you should give me summary judgment. It's pretty rare that the plaintiff is, I would guess it's comparatively rare. Anyway, as she says here, the plaintiff, Dominion, is asking for summary judgment on the basis of the evidence it has assembled, despite the usual difficulty of winning a defamation suit at all. That is what you call confidence in your filing. See, I should have had more confidence in Laura to tell you this. And the filing backs it up with page after page of quotes from the likes of Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Rupert Murdoch, and Fox News Media CEO Suzanne Scott, showing that they knew the score. I'll fill in a little more detail later on, but this is sort of the high-level summary of what's going on for people who have actually followed the story, and probably 90% of you have already read plenty about this story. Maybe there were some true believers left at Fox, but they were not the majority. Fox News pushed lies about Dominion for its own cynical reasons. This filing argues a fire hose of direct evidence of knowing falsity. Ron Nell, is that right? Ron Nell Anderson Jones, a professor of law at the S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah, that's a mouthful, told the New York Times. It gives powerful preview to one of the best supported claims of actual malice we have seen in any major media case. Actual malice is one of the legal standards that such a suit has to meet, she adds parenthetically. By the way, that first name on Professor Jones here, Ron Nell, it gave me pause. It is obviously capital R, R-O-N, and then capital N-E-L-L, all as one name. So, like DeSantis, there's a capital letter in the middle of there as well. Ronell Anderson Jones. All right. So what were some of the emails that they got a hold of and texts between the higher-ups and muckety-mucks at Fox News? There is, of course, Tucker Carlson telling his producer, Alex Pfeiffer, Sidney Powell is lying. And then they, for no particular reason, put her on the air 100 times. Anyway, Sidney Powell's a bit nuts. Sorry, but she is. Laura Ingraham to Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity on November 15th. And really crazy stuff. Rupert Murdoch saying that about what the Trump team was claiming with regard to the election. They knew it was nonsense, but they were worried about losing their voters to Newsmax and OAN. And well put there, by the way, I think, Laura. She could easily have said losing their viewers, and she may have meant losing their viewers. I don't know, but she said losing their voters, and I mean, in many cases, the same thing. But ordinarily, Fox or news network executives probably don't think so much of their audience as voters so much as they do viewers. They're interested in their ratings, but because of the blurring of the lines, and here I'll reference the headline of Jen Hayden's piece about this same situation. Fox is a Republican super PAC masquerading as a news network, and Dominion's lawsuit proves it. And that really puts about as fine a point as you can on it. You're not talking about a news network when you're talking about Fox. And any number of writers and commentators have had something to say about that one. And as a matter of fact, I should probably go and see if I can't dig up the others that I'm thinking of, at least to put aside for later. But I got to do a quick search here and see what I can find about that. And at any rate, but a good point, basically, just that they're thinking of their audience very differently, and it comes out in some of these exchanges here. So as Laura was saying, they knew it was nonsense, but they were worried about losing their voters to Newsmax and OAN. Trump supporters were already angry with Fox for calling Arizona for Joe Biden on election night, and Newsmax and OAN were all in on election lies. Not alienating the Trump base meant Fox News had to offer those viewers at least some of what they wanted. There were panicked texts from Rupert Murdoch, I guess, around on election night and thereafter, saying we're getting killed by these other networks. Not so much OAN and Newsmax, but we're getting killed in the ratings by CNN because CNN viewers want to know what is happening in the news. Whereas Fox viewers want to hear what they want to hear. And they weren't hearing it on Fox because Fox was, at the moment, telling the truth about what was happening in the election, that Donald Trump had lost the election. And they were turning off their TVs in anger, and who knows what else they were doing afterwards, but they were turning off their TVs, so they were getting killed in the ratings, and that's everything to these guys. As a result, they began looking for ways to change the coverage. If we can't exactly report that Trump won the election, we can at least give lots of room and space and airtime to people who were going to come on and talk conspiracy theories, and then we'll get our audience back. And very clearly, I mean, if you're a supposedly a news organization and you're less interested in reporting the news and more interested in simply reporting the opposite of the news just for ratings, then, maybe you're not the thing you say you are, and maybe you ought not to be admitted to the White House and be a part of the White House press corps, et cetera, or have your questions answered. Those are real considerations. Anyway, on January 5th, 2021, Murdoch wrote to Scott, that's the CEO, "It's been suggested our primetime 3 should independently or together say something like the election is over and Joe Biden won. That would be helpful," Murdoch said, because such a statement would go a long way to stop the Trump myth that the election was stolen. Forwarding the email, Scott noted, "I told Rupert that privately they are all there. We need to be careful." They are all there. We need to be careful. It's not punctuating very well. "About using the shows and pissing off the viewers, but they know how to navigate." I see. So that didn't stop Fox News from continuing to push election lies and, relevant to the Dominion lawsuit, lies specifically about Dominion having stolen votes, even as Dominion repeatedly reached out to the network with facts, calling on it to stop spreading lies. As Murdoch said to Scott following the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, "All very well for Sean," meaning Hannity, "to tell you he was in despair about Trump, but what did he tell his viewers? That's a question for all of Fox News to answer." Except now they'll have to answer it to Dominion in front of a judge. They probably weren't anticipating that. The Dominion filing, which is excellent reading material and is linked herein, offers a long list of examples of the same Fox News personalities and executives who pushed election lies, showing that they knew that at least some of what the network was airing was false. November 18th, of course, Tucker Carlson told Laura Ingraham, "Sidney Powell is lying, by the way. I caught her. It's insane." The response here from Ingraham, "Sidney is a complete nut. No one will work with her. Ditto with Rudy. It is unbelievably offensive to me. Our viewers are good people and they believe it," Carlson responded. But Powell and Giuliani continued to make appearances on Fox News for weeks thereafter. For instance, according to the filing, Lou Dobbs had Powell on his show yet again on November 30th, again publishing the fraud and algorithm lies. 2 days prior to this, on November 27th, Fawcett, not certain who we're talking about there, had again texted Dobbs asking if Dobbs had read Powell's lawsuit. Dobbs confirmed he had, and stating those suits were, quote, "complete BS." But then they kept hosting them all the time and saying, "Well, we don't know exactly what the answer is." The day after Powell's Kraken lawsuits were dismissed, Dobbs had her on as a guest again. When Fox News reporter Jackie Heinrich, I hope I'm pronouncing everything correctly here, but this is a great story too. When she actually, and says accurately, I read the wrong word here. When Jackie Heinrich accurately fact-checked a Trump tweet about the election having been stolen, Tucker Carlson, who knows it to be a lie, went ballistic, telling Hannity in a group text, "Please get her fired. Seriously, what the F?" I mean, he uses the whole word here, but we don't. "I'm actually shocked. It needs to stop immediately. Like tonight, it's measurably hurting the company. The stock price is down. Not a joke." Carlson's reference to the stock price was not a side note. He was concerned about the network losing viewership to Newsmax and OAN. And of course, now that you pay everybody in stock options, all the big stars, he was thinking about his own pocketbook. "We must lie to the audience and demand that other people continue to lie to the audience, or else I will make less money. And of course, have less power and less influence as we lose viewers to the other networks." That, I think, hasn't been analyzed quite as closely as the loss of viewers has been. Carlson's reference, oh yes, right, we just did this one. Suzanne Scott, CEO of Fox News Media, got involved in policing the Heinrich tweet, telling other executives, "Sean texted me he's standing down on responding, but not happy about this, and doesn't understand how this is allowed to happen from anyone in news." You mean reporting the news is what he's upset about. "She, Heinrich, has serious nerve doing this, and if this gets picked up, viewers are going to be further disgusted." Heinrich deleted her fact-check tweet, even though it was accurate. Carlson's concern about stock prices may also have come out when, on January 26th, he had Pillow Man Mike Lindell on his show to spread lies about Dominion. Lindell, after all, may have been making claims that Carlson and his producer had privately made clear they knew were false, but he was a top advertiser. The standard for summary judgment, cited also by the Dominion filing, is that a court should grant summary judgment if the party seeking it can show that there is no genuine issue as to any material fact and that the moving party is entitled to a judgment as a matter of law. In layman's terms, Dominion is saying that there are no meaningful facts in dispute, meaning there's no need for a trial, and that the law requires the judge to find that Fox News did indeed defame the company. Fox may try to claim there is a genuine dispute as to material fact, but with this level of evidence from internal communications at the time the claims about Dominion were being regularly aired on Fox News and Fox News Business, they're going to have to get creative. Dominion's lawyers write in the filing, the movement, in this case that would be Dominion, bears the initial burden of showing that undisputed material facts support its motion. But once that burden is met, the burden shifts to the non-movement, Fox, who must show material issues of fact do exist and who may not rest upon the mere allegation or denials of the adverse party's pleading, but instead must set forth specific facts showing that there is a genuine issue for trial. It gets a little hairy there in terms of the lingo, but I think ultimately we've kind of explained it already, so that's fine. We'll move right past that one. Your move, Fox News, and the response filing too may be very entertaining, albeit in a different way. It's amazing that Fox News let this lawsuit get to this point with so much damaging material being publicly aired and brought in evidence in court, and yet Tucker Carlson is still to this day encouraging viewers to question the results of the 2020 election. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. That's basically the end of Laura's piece, and we can move right over to Jen's here. And I found the tweet thread I was thinking of from media professor and media critic Jay Rosen, who was writing about, I think, something similar to what Jen has put forward here. Fox is a Republican super PAC masquerading as a news network, and Dominion's lawsuit proves it. That's Jen Hayden's title for her piece from Friday over at Daily Kos. And it runs a little like this. October 7th, 1996 is, as they say, a date that will live in infamy. That is the day Fox News launched into 17 million homes and forever changed the landscape of not just television, but our entire system of governance. And I don't think it's too much to say that. However, I will point something out, that Fox News launched a little earlier than that in a different iteration, and not necessarily with the idea in mind that it would become the conservative news network that it became today. And I think it launched with that intention in 96. So I think it's still accurate to say that. Just I happen to have been around and seen it, that they launched Fox News earlier, but it looks like it was in a slightly different form and looked a little bit more like, yes, we're going to actually be a news network, not a propaganda network. So by 96, I think that should certainly be the day that lives in infamy. Yes. Okay. So for Daily Kos readers, the obvious has been clear from the start. Fox News exists to tear down Democrats and build up Republicans, especially the ones pushing racial and gender division packaged as culture wars and wokeness. Fox's ideological mission has long been on display, but Dominion Voting Systems' lawsuit against Fox News makes it crystal clear in a whole new way. Take Rupert Murdoch's email about Newsmax, an aspiring Fox competitor, to Fox News CEO Suzanne Scott. It reads this way: "These people should be watched, if skeptically. Trump will concede eventually, and we should concentrate on Georgia, helping any way we can. We don't want to antagonize Trump further, but Giuliani taken with a large grain of salt. Everything at stake here." Helping any way we can, he said. Everything at stake here. Can you imagine for a moment if the owner of NBC News directed the CEO to ensure the network was helping in any way it could help to help a party win an election? If Ted Koppel or Walter Cronkite openly campaigned for a candidate on their airwaves night after night? Sure, Fox News skates the line by claiming its primetime superstars like Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson are entertainment and not actual news, and therefore don't have to follow journalistic standards. But does their audience really get that? And does that supposed distinction matter when the network's goal is to rile up its viewers to help the Republican Party win? It's not just building up Republicans, though. Damaging Democrats and their agenda has been a part of Fox's core daily mission, too. Hillary Clinton was a near daily focus for 25 years. Why? Because she was capable of becoming president, because she was an adept messenger of democratic ideals and progressive goals, and because it is financially lucrative to feed the hate of millions of mostly older, mostly white curmudgeons who tune in for the performative outrage. It's precisely the reason Fox now regularly targets the brilliant and likable Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She has it, whatever it may be, and Fox News knows it. It's the reason the network focuses on damaging Pete Buttigieg in his current role as Secretary of Transportation. It isn't so much about what Ocasio-Cortez and Buttigieg are doing now. It's about where they are going next. It's about laying the groundwork now to make them a little more unstable in the future. The amount of negative coverage a Democrat gets on Fox News is often directly proportionate to their ceiling. In both of these cases, the ceilings are high. The Republican candidates and electeds no longer, or they're just regular Republican candidates and electeds no longer have to show up to explain complicated policy issues and legislative initiatives. Republicans even tailor their congressional floor speeches to get those coveted nightly guest shots on Fox News. In the ecosystem Fox has created, nothing is more important than simply showing up to own the libs. The meaner, the better. Quite frankly, it goes against every American ideal imaginable. One nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. We are going on 30 years of intentional division. At Daily Kos, we do work to bring you the news through a progressive lens, and to help elect more and better Democrats, but we wear that on our sleeve. It's right there in our mission statement. We aren't being piped into your dentist's waiting room under the guise of being a regular old news network. In fact, countering the force that is Fox News has been a central part of this website and other progressive outlets like Media Matters. Hat tip to this crew. Fox News has spent 27 years diligently dividing this nation and even dividing families, night after night of hearing that their neighbors, coworkers, friends, and even their own families are socialists trying to ruin this great nation. It has promoted a series of poisonous personalities whose entire job seems to be fear-mongering with racist dog whistles and mean girl rants to stick it to the libs. The damage they have done is incalculable, and it's not hyperbole to say this nation cannot heal unless and until Fox News changes course, something they have no interest in doing. It's hard work countering narratives and the barrage of misinformation and disinformation from a network that reaches 91% of American homes. But with your help, we keep at it because we have to. What alternative is there? Just let Murdoch, Carlson, and Hannity win? In the words of Rupert Murdoch himself, everything is at stake here, and so we keep going. And they helpfully remind you at that point that they too, Daily Kos as well, needs your support. And as we do as well, maybe that's a good spot to just take a short diversion and thank all the people who are supporting us and who are new to supporting us, or have boosted their support for us, and probably likely supporting Daily Kos as well, because these are generous folks, of course. But I think we left off on the 15th or on the 14th of this month, so we're fairly recent still. We're doing a pretty good job, but check this out. Since the 14th, since Valentine's Day, that's just a week ago, right? We can add Brett Virginia Kensington to the list on the 15th, joining us on Patreon, as well as Christine on 16. Is that right? On 16, like on 16th Street, on 16th Avenue. I don't know, but that's a clever name. Christine on 16, and it rhymes. That's the obvious intent of this. And guess when she did it? On the 16th of February. So how do you like that? Maybe that's all. She's just an anonymous donor, and whatever the date is, she's on that. It just happened to rhyme the day she donated to us. Let's see. Frank Kite also joining on the 16th. So, like, within a couple of days of Valentine's Day, 1, 2, 3. And then on the 17th, 2 more people. One new donor, Jay Fennell. And Linda Chapman, who already a donor, who decided to go back and boost the donation that she was giving. Mark Hogue did the same as well. You hear his contributions from time to time on the air. We thank you very much for that. Oh, that reminds me that Rosalind McGregor sent me another one, and I didn't pick it up because it was the weekend and yada, yada. And now it's Tuesday. And all right, I'm sorry, Rosalind. I'll go grab that thing and edit it up so that it's ready to roll for tomorrow. Also making a PayPal contribution. And remember, that option is available to you if you feel a little weird or hinky about Patreon. So far, it's been pretty good security-wise. I haven't heard of any major leaks of information, but as you know, with all websites, I guess eventually that's a possibility for just about anyone. But if you feel more comfortable with PayPal, that's there too. Valerie Scriff joining us as a patron via PayPal on just yesterday, the 20th. So the week passed, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new or increased donations. So thank you very much to everyone. The new spots are working. I think probably thanking everybody on the air is probably working. Great news, helping us reverse the trend. And the more we can build, the more we can do, or at the very least, the more we can make Scott feel like he's not wasting his time by helping us do it. How about that? Okay. Now, I mentioned to you that there was also a tweet thread, or not a tweet thread, I'm sorry, a Mastodon toot thread, I don't know what you would call it, by Jay Rosen, the, we'll say, esteemed and famed media critic and communications professor, who had something very similar to say to where Jen was going with her piece. This long thread reads, "The latest filing by Dominion Voting Systems in its defamation suit against Fox nails something critics have long argued for. Fox is not a news organization. It is something else. But what is this other thing? In this thread, I will try to answer that." And he goes on to say, "The Dominion suit establishes that Fox stars, like Tucker Carlson, and executives like CEO Suzanne Scott were fearful and enraged when some of their own people blundered into delivering a true and accurate report about the 2020 election." Think about that for a moment. When its own talent reported the facts truthfully, the result was an atmosphere of crisis in the company. This is one way we know that Fox is not specifically a news organization. There are others. But this is an interesting point, too, by the way. I mean, it's one thing for, I guess, I mean, it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing for everybody when Tucker Carlson, etc., pretend, well, we're not news, we're opinion, and we might not even be opinion. We're just sort of entertainment, like World Wrestling Federation or something like that. And, we don't have to follow the rules. But over at the regular newsroom, when a regular news reporter, like the hard news reporters, every once in a while, when people like us crazy hippies at Daily Kos and others, say to a Democratic administration, for instance, you ought not to allow Fox News into the press briefing room. They're not a news organization. They shouldn't be credentialed, and you shouldn't answer their questions, and you should never call on their reporters. And they say, oh, no, come on. I mean, there's the opinion people at Tucker Carlson, et cetera. They all may be awful and everything, but there's a hard news organization in there, and good people work there, and they're real reporters. And might actually have a grain of truth to it. There are, I guess, a few people, like, for instance, Jackie Heinrich here, who did the right thing and reported the right thing. But there's no room for that in the Fox organization, right? You report the news correctly and straight, all the things that defenders of professional colleagues at the hard news, supposedly, side of Fox News say, well, you can't paint with such a broad brush. They're not all like Tucker Carlson. Some of them are serious professionals. When they do their job as serious professionals, they are threatened with firing, and they end up having to delete their own work, delete the tweets of hard news that was actually supported and supportable and quite accurate. So you say that they're hard news professionals, but they end up not being allowed to act like hard news professionals because they're not working for a news organization. And while it's sad that those people will lose their jobs, if they're hard news reporters and real professionals, presumably some of them will be picked up by other networks. Or Fox News would change its stripes. No way. Anyway, back to Jay Rosen's writing about this. There are other examples that point specifically to Fox not being a news organization. Eric Wemple of the Washington Post shows how responsible behavior by a wayward presenter, Neil Cavuto, was treated by company executives as a brand threat. If responsible journalism can be a threat to your brand, then it's not a news brand you have cultivated. It's something different. And here, a news clip from the Washington Post that spells it all out. Fearing an all-out ratings crisis, Fox News executives, quote, made an explicit decision to push narratives to entice their audiences back, unquote. The Dominion filing says journalism wasn't one of those narratives. On November 9th, Neil Cavuto, an afternoon host known for his affability and independence, cut away from unsupported remarks by White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, saying, unless she has some more details to back that up, I can't in good countenance continue to show you this, Cavuto said on air. That moment triggered a notification from an executive at parent company Fox Corp about, quote, the brand threat from Cavuto's action. An email from Fox News Media Chief Executive Suzanne Scott to other executives following the incident is redacted from the filing. Pretty interesting. Jay continues. Now here below is Brian Stelter with another story from Dominion's latest filing. A truth-telling journalist at Fox was thought by Tucker Carlson to have committed a firing offense. Her crime? You know it already. Seeing no evidence for Trump's stolen election claims that she said on Twitter, about which she said on Twitter, there is no evidence. And here is the clip about that one too. Where do we start with this one? Heinrich, we'll start midway down. She wrote that top election infrastructure officials, including some in Trump's administration, had issued a statement saying there is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. Heinrich, a talented young correspondent at Fox, was a minnow, and the primetime sharks were hungry. The three hosts, Hannity, Carlson, and Laura Ingraham, were in a text chain together where they had been commiserating about the madness of the post-election period. Carlson flagged, and by the way, when they mean the madness, they were among themselves saying, yeah, it's crazy, the election wasn't stolen, and look at all these nuts, including Trump, saying it was. Meanwhile, though, Carlson still flags Heinrich's tweet and told Hannity, please get her fired. Why? Because her minor Twitter fact check of an out-of-control president was exactly the sort of thing that Fox's fan base could not stand to see. That's the whole reason why tell the truth when you should be watching the stock price instead. Click through, Jay says, to see Jackie Heinrich's crime, and you'll see what I mean. You'll see the tweet in question. It is a very careful, limited statement. Mild pushback is actually available. I understood she deleted it, but maybe it's still out there here. It is this, basically. She's picked up on the former guy's tweet from November 12th, 2020, in all capitals, all the way through. He writes, or he's quoting it. It says, report, Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States using Dominion voting systems switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden. This, according to that idiot weirdo Chanel Rion from OAN. And that's the report. Jackie Heinrich picking that tweet up and noting Dominion voting and top election infrastructure officials categorically deny this. The November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. Right? And then lots of people are obviously answering her, hey, can you whisper this to your colleagues, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the tweet referenced by Jay Rosen when he says, click through and see, this is Jackie Heinrich's crime here. It's a very careful, limited statement, mild pushback, but Carlson felt panic over it and demanded her head. This kind of behavior exposes a weakness for Fox, keepers of a resentment machine, for that is what Fox is, may suddenly find the resentment coming straight for them. Sidney Powell is lying, said Tucker Carlson to his producer. Sidney Powell's a bit nuts, said Laura Ingraham to her colleagues, but they did not share this view with their audience. Defenders of Fox get a lot of mileage out of describing its evening lineup as the opinion side, the quote-unquote opinion side of the operation. But that's not accurate either. About Sidney Powell, the primetime stars withheld their opinions. Meanwhile, the bookers at Fox placed her on show after show. And that's an excellent point, right? Well, they don't have to adhere to the same rules as our newsroom. This is the opinion side. Well, if so, where's their opinion about Sidney Powell? Because they're not airing it. They're hiding their opinion. They're selling a different one, the one that helps the stock price and the bottom line, but they're not sharing their own opinions. They're doing the exact opposite. If Fox News, or rather if Fox, just regular Fox, is a news organization, and Jay says, to me it's not, and it's not opinion either, because the Dominion filing shows that the hosts are frightened to share their opinions, then what is it exactly? Some common answers I receive, it's entertainment, a lot like professional wrestling. It's propaganda. What else do you need to know? No, Jay, it's just ratings. When I use the term Fox, he says, I mean the commercial arm of a political movement that has taken control of the Republican Party. That's interesting, too, because it made me think of what we were talking about yesterday. One, that they have a commercial arm of a political party, which is a sort of a new and weird development, even a step weirder than the one that's terrible and frightening and destabilizing, but which we've seen before, which is a political party developing a paramilitary arm, as we discussed. The Republican Party and the militias having that relationship and putting the Republican Party in the company of Sinn Féin and IRA and Hezbollah in that case. But add a commercial arm. That's really something. The product is resentment news, by which I mean current ways to resent, new people to resent. Here's something they call critical race theory. You should resent it. Success in a market like that makes for political power. That's the Fox I know, a kind of machine. And by machine, I mean to invoke both the steady manufacture of politicized grievance for fun and profit, and the kind of machine through which, say, Richard Daley rose to power in the mid-20th century. A machine in the sense of the Cook County Democratic machine. Again, that's not a news organization. Dominion's filings describe a time when the audience took charge of the Fox resentment machine. Power traded hands for a moment. Viewer backlash from the Fox newsroom's correct call in Arizona felt ruinous to the people at the top of the network. Stars with their own shows and executives nominally in charge of Fox saw how weak their positions were. Read Brian Stelter in The Atlantic about this. I had that one socked away and we haven't read it yet, but Brian's piece, I never truly understood Fox News until now. Very interesting, although it had a lot of people grinding their teeth too. Like, how could it have taken you so long to come around to an understanding of Fox News? But we all have our own way of arriving at it. But I think this Dominion lawsuit, the big point about the Dominion lawsuit is it's making it impossible for others who have attempted to not reach this conclusion or to reach some bifurcated conclusion whereby the people in the newsroom were good people and real reporters and the people on the opinion side really did share their opinions with people, and therefore, as much as we didn't like it, it was all still okay. I think this exposes an awful lot. Jay continues, I said it earlier, confident keepers of a resentment machine can find the resentment coming straight at them. The Republican Party has to continually adapt to that. Fox has to accept that its powers are limited. Meanwhile, the Fox audience can now veto events that in the rest of the world unquestionably occurred, but they can veto them with their viewership and force Fox News to say, maybe they didn't occur, or maybe they occurred differently, or maybe something completely different, or we'll look over here instead. You're not a news organization if your audience's refusal to accept what happened prevents what happened from regularly airing as news. Though it is styled as one, Fox is not a news organization, and it's not opinion either. It is something else. Power formation by means of resentment news. But the formula doesn't always work. The crowd seethes back when the machine miscalculates, generating its own kind of power. Reactionary is the right term for it. Both the Republican Party and Rupert Murdoch's fear and loathing machine know they cannot control the core audience for commercialized resentment and white nationalism, which will turn on anyone who interferes in the free exercise of its many hatreds. The power structure at Fox called it respecting the audience when they stoked its false and pathetic belief in a stolen election. Showing respect to viewers by actively misinforming them, as Stelter put it, may stop them from raging at you, but it's not the kind of behavior exhibited by a news company. For more on the Dominion filing, he goes on to say, and what it says about Fox, see the actual document here. It's a link to it. You can take a look. It has some redactions. There's New York Times coverage that he's gifting links to, and Eric Wemple's thread about his own writing and his own piece in the Washington Post, which he links to as well. So it's pretty amazing and pretty revealing and a pretty major event, and so we did have to turn our attention to it and spend some time on it. Now I've got some other things that I want to share with you, and some in no particular order. So let's go by order in which they're sitting in pocket at the moment. Another contribution from my brother Mark, who points out something, an article with a headline that I meant to tell you the other day when I noticed that at least one of these cases had risen to the top of the news. But let's depend instead on ABC News and Lucian Bruggeman, maybe, like Bruges, the city, I don't know. Or unless it's Bruggeman, Bruggeman. Sorry, Lucian. We'll figure it out at some point. Trump-era pardon recipients are increasingly back in legal jeopardy. I noticed the other day, circulating was the story, I guess, of we must be at the sentencing stage, I guess, for which one is it? I can't remember which of the various lunatics that, Jesse Benton, that's right, is the name of the guy who had been pardoned for something else previously, although it was something else, another campaign finance violation, essentially. But after having been pardoned for the one for which he had previously been sentenced, he was caught in another such scheme and is basically back and getting sentenced to jail again. But that's a interesting thing, because I had seen, Roger Stone, of course, got one of these pardons, and he instantly just used it to relaunch his life of crime. So, good headline, but terrible subheader, right? Again, the headline, Trump-era pardon recipients are increasingly back in legal jeopardy. That's exciting. We should read about that. But how about this for a gentle landing in the subheader? Some experts connect the phenomenon to Trump's unorthodox approach to clemency. I mean, I actually laughed out loud when I read that one. And I mean, they have a point, which will be illustrated in the piece. I should just go ahead and read it. Although, we're right up against our break here. So instead, I'll tell you this. Yes, he had an unorthodox approach to clemency. And the point that they're going to make in the article, I'll read it to you. You deserve the real, organized version of it. But he was saying, Trump was very sloppy and haphazard and just sort of did things off the cuff. I saw a segment on Fox News and they said that you should pardon this guy. So I pardoned the guy, and they hardly ever went through the office of the White House counsel and the office of the pardon attorneys at the DOJ, who normally it's a very extensive process. They vet the people. They want to make sure that you're not going to pardon them and then they're going to go out and embarrass the president who pardoned them. But they skipped that all the time, and he was just pardoning his friends and his buddies or whoever he saw on Fox News. So yeah, that's going to kind of screw things up a little bit. That's true. But what's sort of unmentioned about this, the unconventional approach to clemency, is in many cases, what you really need to be saying here is, some experts, including me, connect the phenomenon to Trump's purposefully pardoning people he knew to be guilty of the crimes that they committed, and that sort of crime was that person's way of life. And not only did he know for sure that they would return to this life of crime, he hoped they would because it always inured to his benefit. So yeah, that's unconventional. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So I've spit out my feelings very quickly before the break about this ABC News piece. Now let's read it to you in more organized fashion. But with that comment in mind, that this is a very gentle treatment of what's going on here, but a very important treatment of that more gentle background point is very valid and a real thing, and you should absolutely hear about it. But yeah, you might also keep in mind that Trump was pardoning people because he knew they would be recidivists. He was hoping they would be, because their initial crime inured to his benefit, and their subsequent crime, in many cases, would inure to his benefit as well. And that, I guess, could fairly, though I think a little over broadly, be described as, an unorthodox approach to clemency. Ready for the actual article? In February, former newspaper executive Kenneth Curson, Kurson, pleaded guilty to cyber-stalking his ex-wife. Months later, rapper Kodak Black was arrested on felony drug charges in Florida before pleading not guilty, and in October, jurors found political operative Jesse Benton guilty of illegally funneling Russian money into a group aligned with former President Donald Trump. What do you know? The the trio's circumstances, there are inconsistencies as well, but the trio's circumstances may seem unrelated, but they share one notable link. All, that is to say, Kenneth Kurson, Kodak Black, and Jesse Benton all were previously granted clemency by Trump while he was in office. And remember, clemency, the broader term for both presidential pardons, but also commutations of sentences and not erasing the guilty verdict, but simply releasing people from prison is what we referred to when I use the word clemency. Or commutation of sentence. I sort of use those interchangeably, whereas pardon is about as simple a term as you can imagine. It just erases your guilt as well. Anyway, and the list doesn't end there, or at least I guess really it doesn't erase your guilt per se, but I guess it prevents you from the pardon immediately releases you. The clemency, I guess, for time served, etc. There's different levels of clemency, but that's the broadest possible term. That's why they use that, because some of those people didn't perhaps get pardons. They may just have been released from prison. Anyway, an ABC News analysis of the 238 people who were pardoned or had their sentences commuted, there you go, during the Trump administration found at least 10 who have since faced legal scrutiny. And I mean, okay, a lot of people face legal scrutiny, but what was the scrutiny about, and what were the 10 and what were they doing? That's going to matter. Anyway, either because they are under investigation or are charged with a crime, or they are already convicted again of another crime. Legal experts call this recurring theme unprecedented, but not entirely unexpected given the former president's unorthodox approach to the pardon process. And here, again, the most generous possible analysis of it is given. We give you the more forthright analysis of it right up at the top. He wants these people to commit these crimes. Anyway, what ABC News says is, President Trump bypassed the formal and orderly Justice Department process in favor of an informal and fairly chaotic White House operation, relying in some cases on his personal views and in others on recommendations from people he knew or who gained access to him in various ways, said Margaret Love, a lawyer who represents clients seeking pardons and a former U.S. pardon attorney, a Justice Department appointee who helps advise presidents on grants of clemency. So, it might have been predicted, said Love, that some who made it through that lax gauntlet were going to get in trouble again. Those pardoned by Trump during his term in office included dozens of friends and political allies. The list included celebrities, lawmakers, and former aides who had been convicted of crimes ranging from fraud to murder, including 4 private military contractors who were in prison for murdering 17 Iraqi citizens, including 2 children, in a 2007 attack in Baghdad. An analysis by 2 Ivy League academics determined that just 25 of those 238 pardons went through the Office of the Pardon Attorney, that small enclave within the Justice Department that fields clemency applications and examines the merits of each case before deciding whether to recommend a convict for presidential action. The researchers said that figure represented an historic low. The process is supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be careful. It's supposed to be accurate. And it's also supposed to be a process that helps predict who is not going to recidivate. That's a great use of the word there. Said Larry Coopers, it's Kupers, by the way, who served as the acting U.S. pardon attorney for 18 months at the beginning of the Trump administration. That's right, and acting U.S. pardon attorney for the Trump administration. And yet, he'll tell you on the record, yeah, it's supposed to be all of these things, implying, of course, that it wasn't because they never used us. Recidivism rates from previous administrations' clemencies is opaque, as federal agencies don't keep tabs on clemency grantees after their release. But In one study reviewing former President Barack Obama's 2014 clemency initiative, which led to sentence commutations for nearly 1,700 federal drug offenders, and I mean, that's very definitely a different action and a different pool of people and a very large number. And so you'd expect, especially when you're talking about drug crimes, you might find somebody else getting in trouble at some point. Still, right? This is 1,700 federal drug offenders who received clemency. The independent and bipartisan U.S. Sentencing Commission found only three of the 1,700 who had been rearrested by the end of 2017. I think here we have people under investigation, rearrested, already convicted, etc. 10 out of 238 versus 3 out of 1,700. All right. That's a better record, 3 out of 1,700. A Texas woman was rearrested on theft charges less than a year after earning an Obama commutation of her life sentence in 2016, and another Texan pleaded guilty to drug charges less than 2 years after earning a life sentence commutation under Obama's 2014 clemency initiative. Based on news accounts and other available evidence, the number of clemency grantees who have gone on to commit additional crimes remains, quote, incredibly low, Coopers said. For Trump-era pardons, however, experts said the numbers seem disproportionately high. Next section here, Trump's Inner Circle, it's titled. Chief among those pardoned is Steve Bannon, a former White House aide and one of Trump's highest-profile political allies. Bannon was found guilty in July of contempt of Congress for his refusal to testify before the House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol attack and was sentenced to 4 months in prison. He also faces charges in New York State for allegedly defrauding donors to the We Build the Wall fundraising campaign, the same allegation, by the way, for which he faced federal charges before Trump intervened with a presidential pardon. Bannon has pleaded not guilty to the state charges. Two other notable members of Trump's inner circle, veteran political operative Roger Stone, ding, 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 and Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, are also involved in ongoing investigations. Both were prosecuted by former special counsel Robert Mueller, Stone for lying to Congress, Flynn for lying to federal investigators, and were later pardoned by Trump. A federal appellate judge recently ordered that Flynn must provide testimony to an Atlanta area district attorney who called Flynn a necessary and material witness to Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. And Justice Department prosecutors investigating the events of January 6th are reporting examining Stone's alleged ties to violent extremists who attacked the Capitol. Mark Osler, a professor at St. Thomas University Law School and an expert on presidential clemency, said many of the Trump-era clemency recipients, particularly those who were prosecuted for crimes they committed while working for Trump, like Stone, Bannon, and Flynn, were people who thought they were above the law already. And Trump, by giving them a pardon after they'd been charged or convicted of a crime, only enhanced that sense of entitlement, Osler said. U.S. presidents have in the past gone to lengths to avoid the appearance of political patronage tainting the clemency process. George W. Bush went so far as to revoke a pardon one day after granting it, after it came to light that the grantee's father had donated almost $30,000 to the Republican Party just months earlier. Hey, you can revoke pardons? Who knew? Some experts ABC News spoke with noted the irony of Trump's clemency practices, considering his repeated claims to support law and order. If the Democratic Party wants to stand with anarchists, agitators, rioters, looters, and flag burners, that is up to them, but I, as your president, will not be a part of it, Trump told attendees, I should have done it in his voice, at the 2020 Republican National Convention. We must always have law and order. Trump has also suggested that he would look favorably at pardons for those convicted for their participation in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol if reelected to the White House in 2024. Next up, a slapdash approach. Another notable Trump-era clemency recipient who has since fallen back into legal jeopardy is former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, whose fraud sentence was cut 20 years short by a commutation, but who reportedly remains under federal investigation for unpaid restitution tied to the public corruption charges that in 2013 landed him in prison. A lawyer who has represented Kilpatrick said that outstanding restitution payments for ex-convicts are common, but acknowledged that failure to repay them could leave Kilpatrick in legal jeopardy. And Jonathan Braun, or Braun, B-R-A-U-N, whose 10-year drug smuggling sentence was cut 9 years short by a Trump commutation, is facing lawsuits from the Federal Trade Commission and the New York Attorney General's office for allegedly running a predatory loan scheme targeting small businesses. That's just a career criminal. Brown, whatever his name is, harassed, insulted, swore at, and threatened his debtors, according to a June 2020 petition filed by the New York Attorney General. He allegedly told one small business owner, "I will take your daughters from you," and told another, "I am going to make you bleed." In court, Brown, whatever, has denied these claims and requested a trial. What do you know? Well, I don't know. I guess I'd usually go with Braun on this one, but there's the senator, Mike Brown. He says Brown for some reason. So who knows? The lawsuits predate Brown's sentence commutation, but that he still managed to secure a commutation from Trump in spite of the active suits shows what happens when you ignore the formal process in favor of a slapdash approach, said Osler, the presidential clemency expert. A trained staff of analysts who specialize in sniffing out facts like this was sidelined with predictable results, Osler said. Some who have faced legal scrutiny since securing clemency have accused prosecutors of pursuing vendettas against Trump. After learning of the charges filed against him by New York State prosecutors, Bannon said, this is nothing more than a partisan political weaponization of the criminal justice system. He's using the memed watchword here, weaponization. And in August, after federal prosecutors suggested they would seek to retry Philip Esformes, a Florida-based nursing home business owner, on 6 hung counts from his 2019 trial after his 20-year fraud sentence was commuted by Trump, a member of Esformes' legal team said the Justice Department's flagrant disregard for President Trump's clemency order is motivated by acrimony toward him. Prosecutors in Manhattan also attempted to target former Trump campaign chief Paul Manafort on state mortgage fraud charges after he was convicted in 2019 on similar federal charges, a move widely seen as a means to ensure Manafort would face justice even in the event that Trump pardoned him for the federal offenses. Manafort was indeed pardoned by Trump in December of 2020, and in 2021, a New York appeals court ruled that the state charges should be tossed, citing the state's double jeopardy rule. Meanwhile, the U.S. Pardon Attorney's Office says more than 17,000 applicants for clemency remain pending. And while experts agree that the clemency process is in desperate need of an overhaul, many suggest removing it from the Justice Department's bureaucracy and into its own office. There remains widespread support for the institution and its principles. Osler said he's concerned that Trump's approach to clemency and the subsequent legal travails for some beneficiaries could cause lasting harm to the process. It could sour clemency for people who really, deeply, richly deserve it, Osler said. And that is, of course, quite true. But yeah, unfortunately, ABC News was a little timid about going where they really needed to go with this, which is to say, of course, you could have predicted this. He was, again, offering clemency to people for crimes that they committed for his benefit. And in the case of people like Roger Stone, obviously, if you commit these crimes on a regular basis and get a pardon, you know, you're never really going to learn your lesson and say, I really came close that time. I really have to ratchet it back. You're just going to continue to do the same thing. I've never paid a price for any of my crimes. Why worry about that now? All right, let's see. Other things to add to the mix for today. There are several. Let's see. So I wanted to mention, as I said in the morning post, I think we're in the clear just in terms of whether or not there have been any other newly elected Republican members of Congress exposed as fabulists, fabricating their resumes and backgrounds since Andy Ogles, I don't know how he pronounces his name, was added to the list along with Anna Paulina Luna and George Santos. I don't think there have been any other ones, so I don't know whether that's going to be of any interest for discussion by Joan, but maybe. It was pretty funny. And we didn't get all the way through his exposure, I guess, when we read the news channel, the local news Channel 5 investigation, but I think you got the flavor for it. I think we might have left off, though. Maybe I want to take a peek back at that article. We got the basic gist that he was exaggerating that he had worked in as an economist, and that we never did get an answer about whether or not he had faked up his Middle Tennessee State University diploma, claiming a Bachelor of Science degree, which he meant for us to understand as an economics degree, given that he, according to the Middle Tennessee's own records, he graduated with a degree in international relations with a minors in psychology and English, which would be a Bachelor of Arts degree. And it's unclear. Oh, well, it does say international relations Bachelor of Science. Huh, that is interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a BS in international relations before. And I'm not certain that that's correct or that they actually offer that. Let me just Google something about that. Is that like a real thing? Bachelor of Science and International Relations? Almost everywhere I've ever seen the major, it's viewed as a Bachelor of Arts degree. But there is a Bachelor of Science in International Affairs at GW, is that right? So I suppose it's possible. And what is a Bachelor of Science in International Relations is what Google comes back with. Although, yeah, the International Relations BA degree is an interdisciplinary course addressing global challenges, issues, and approaches to politics. But yeah, I mean, so the answer to what is a Bachelor of Science in International Relations is the answer to what is a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations. So, I don't know. I've not seen that used anywhere other than this allegation at Middle Tennessee State University. And I guess I should click through to see whether GW really does this or not. Maybe I will take a look at the Bachelor of Science in International Affairs. That's for real. And building on the same core curriculum found in our world-class Bachelor of Arts program, the Bachelor of Science in International Affairs, says the GWU site, integrates additional advanced STEM training to put you at the top of the pack when navigating the increasingly science and tech-dependent landscape of 21st century global affairs. I suppose you could argue for that. But whether or not Middle Tennessee State University also had this program back in, what's the date on this one? 2007, I guess is open to question. But at any rate, he then goes on to a full career of fabulism, including calling himself a former law enforcement officer and an expert in international human trafficking. Neither of which apparently he was able to present any evidence of. Let me skip down to the bottom of the story just to get that on record. Andy Ogles' stories, human trafficking expert. Again, according to News Channel 5 out of Nashville. Ogles did some work in 2011 for Abolition International, a nonprofit founded by gospel artist Natalie Grant. Interesting. His congressional website claims Ogles, as chief operating officer, was responsible for overseeing operations and investments in 12 countries. Okay, that would be impressive, right? I began, he says, volunteering my time, Ogles said on Washington Watch, Then I ended up becoming chief operating officer. That's a tremendous climb. It was just one of those I didn't really intend to set out to be so heavily involved in the fight against human trafficking. It just kind of occurred. Privately, people associated with the group dispute Ogles' characterization of his role, although they were reluctant to get into a war of words with a member of Congress. You can understand that. Now, in fact, the group's tax returns show that Ogles held a part-time position that paid him a grand total of $4,000. This is a man, of course, who just got done claiming to have become chief operating officer of the entire thing, overseeing operations and investments in 12 countries. Part-time, $4,000. Wow, said Heidi Campbell, who I'm sure was cited earlier in the piece, but we read that days ago, so I've forgotten who Heidi Campbell is, but she's right. Wow, that does not sound to me like somebody who was the COO. An archived version of the group's website shows it was making grants to holistic ministries in just a handful of countries, not 12, and certainly not busting international sex rings nor rescuing human trafficking victims. News Channel 5 Investigates asked Campbell if this information had come out, would it have made any difference? Yeah, I think it might have, the Nashville Democrat responded. Maybe that was his opponent in the general election. But just as Ogles largely avoided the media during his campaign, he also ignored our questions about his questionable claims. News Channel 5 sent an email to Congressman Ogles' press secretary laying out our findings and giving them a chance to respond. We heard nothing. We also reached out to Dr. Laffer, who has criticized others who don't actually have degrees, especially doctorates, in economics. Again, we did not hear back. Campbell said it should be a wake-up call for all Americans. My election is over, and I've moved on with that. That's fine, but I do think going forward, people need to know who they are electing. Yeah, I would say that's probably right. I still wonder whether this local news channel was motivated to check into their newly elected Republican member of Congress because of stories like George Santos's and Anna Paulina Luna's, and they thought, well, it all appears to be on the up and up. I haven't heard anybody say that it wasn't, but has anybody checked? And lo and behold, when they went ahead and checked, it turns out he was full of it. So maybe everybody ought to be doing this, especially to their newly elected Republican members of Congress. I think it would be wise. All right, let's see. A couple of other things that I thought we might add to our collection, our collective knowledge here. I'll have to save some of these for some other days. But let's add this one from The Guardian, just another check-in on the loony Republicans in the various states intent on doing more and more that could potentially bring about the ruination of the Republican Party because it's of less than zero interest to most normal people in America. This, a piece in The Guardian, which might mean I can't get all the way through it, but I'm not sure. Actually, it looks like a pretty extensive amount of it is available. Republicans take aim at risque jokes and romance novels. Ooh, look out. With anti-sex bills. That is a great headline from out of The Guardian. The bills, it says in the subheader, are part of the religious rights post-Roe strategy, with most prevalent ones relating to age verification of sex-related websites, which might not be a terrible idea, but I guess is leading in some unexpected directions. But this, too, might end up being another example of, hey, how about all those moderate normies who said, hey, no, the Republicans aren't going to take it that far. Don't panic. We're so tired of you dirty hippies always seeing the apocalypse over the horizon. But wow, here it comes. Let's see. A wave of proposed legislation pushed by Republicans across the U.S. at the state level is aimed at outlawing aspects of sexuality that could have a huge impact on Americans' private lives and businesses. And remember small government? Opponents of the laws before legislatures in various states say the planned new legislation could spawn prosecution of those terrible pornographers, breast pump companies in Texas, for nipples and advertising. Ooh, you can't be showing that. You know, illustrated diagrams, medical diagrams of the breast and how a breast pump might fit over it properly. Can't have that in the instructions or in the ads. My goodness, think of what it could lead to. Grooming of children, drag something. I mean, wow, it's a medical device, guys. Or a bookstore might be banned from selling romance novels in West Virginia. The bodice, I guess, being ripped a little bit too much on the cover, it seems. Or South Carolina could imprison stand-up comics if a risque joke is heard by a young person. That is outrageous. The bills are part of a post-Roe nationwide strategy. A strategy, I'm telling you, by the religious wing of the Republican Party. Oh, another wing. They've got a religious wing, a paramilitary wing, a commercial wing. Lots of wings this party has. Now that federal abortion rights have fallen, part of their strategy, they range from banning all businesses that sell sex-related goods, I guess like oysters, to anti-drag queen bills. Tyler Dees, an Arkansas state senator who wrote an anti-porn bill, I guess they should have enclosed that in quotes, anti-porn bill, said, "I would love to outlaw it all," referring to porn. Maybe, except we just don't know what this guy's idea of porn is, given that in West Virginia that means romance novels. The most prevalent bills relate to age verification of sex-related websites. 17 states drafted porn age verification bills, many inspired by Louisiana's law that went into effect in January. And those aren't the worst of it, I'm sure, but I'd love to get an explanation of how you're going to end up banning romance novels and medical devices. Breast pumps? Come on, this can't be real. Except it is. They really suck. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I don't think we need to continue for the moment with the rest of this Guardian piece, but I'll refer it to, I'll hand it over to Scott. You all can read the rest of it. I mean, I imagine, I hope it doesn't get any more outrageous than the idea that you can't sell medical devices by showing people how a breast pump might work because, oh my God, not a particularly pro-family kind of a thing to do. But then they would say, of course, well, you wouldn't need a breast pump if you would just stay at home with your kids. I'm sure that doesn't bother them a great deal. And one of these days I'll figure out how we get to the covers of romance novels being outlawed as porn in West Virginia. But, man, I'd be happy to abandon the topic. But Joan McCarter is here, and I don't know, maybe you're interested in the topic, or maybe you're just as soon ditch it too. But it's happening, and you need to know that.
That would have ruined Fabio's career.
Yeah, right. I mean, although I wonder whether they, I don't know, do they think that's pornographic, or is it the only the women on there? And if Fabio is on there, you can have burqa rippers, but not bodice rippers.
Well, now that would be fun.
Right.
Maybe we could have gay romance novels.
Right, that's true. They hadn't outlawed any of that.
If it's women's memories showing, maybe it's okay. That would be a fun response.
Sure. We could try it out, although, I mean, I don't know who's advocating for it, or whether the bookstores in West Virginia are against it or for it. I have no idea, but man, it's really that's it's quite amazing. And then, of course, I forgot, in South Carolina, there's the bill that would criminalize using, quote, profane language related to, quote, sexual or excretory organs or activities, like activities for the kids, right? Sure. In front of minors during performances. So if a minor hears you use profane language related to sexual or excretory organs. Okay. 10 years in prison. Our big comedian problem is finally solved.
Seriously?
Yeah.
A felony?
That's what it says, yeah. Up to it's not a past measure at this point. It's some lunatic who says they're going to drop it. But, ordinarily, the old guardrails of, I can't do that, people will say I'm insane, are, of course, gone.
Oh, long gone.
Yeah. So now, you get that a lot in state legislatures. And I guess the more local the legislature, the less guardrails there are, or in some cases, people figure the less attention will be paid to my antics. Or in some cases, there are people who say, well, I'm doing my antics on purpose so I get lots of attention and get on Fox News and move up in the world. But yeah, that's a new one for me. South Carolina is where that guy, tell a dirty joke, go to jail for 10 years, because that's not Taliban-ish at all. Oh, well. What's going on in our national legislature? Anything like that?
No.
Okay, good. So far,
because
so good.
It's President's Day week.
Right, so they're not here to do that stuff.
President's Day week for more than half the month with the House.
Yeah, well, you need time to fly to Ukraine and back, for instance. Striving mightily among the ranks of the Republicans to find a reason to call a trip to Ukraine bad and weak, I noticed, when in fact it's normally viewed as good and strong for presidents to fly into war zones to support allies or
to train into
our own
war
troops.
zones. I mean, the trip was incredible.
Oh, I
really
didn't hear the details of it.
10 hours on the train from Poland into Kyiv.
Wow.
And then 10 hours
trains,
out
man.
back to Poland.
Wow. I figured it was an overnight flight in and out.
No, he took the train.
That guy loves trains. That's crazy.
This journey was, it's FDR on the steamer, to Yalta kind of.
Wow.
Kind of heroics here from Biden.
Huh. I had not heard that, so that's pretty amazing all by itself. And
this is apparently the way most world leaders get into Kyiv is via the train, because
I guess it's dangerous in the air with missiles and such. Yeah. Although, you wouldn't want to risk it. I'm surprised that they're unable to target these trains. You would think that would be doable, but
Russia was notified.
Okay.
Biden was going in.
Yeah.
Just before he went in, Russia was notified. They acknowledged receipt of that notification and chose not to escalate.
Yes, I think that they still understand that that's wise not to.
Yes.
Okay, and that's good. I know.
But yes, and then I was in the middle of writing this story. The pro-Putin, pro-Russia wing of Republicans.
Another wing.
Most of it.
More wings, yes.
Is continuing the Biden hates American white people attack. And is going to Ukraine. Proved it.
Yeah, I know, because there's no white people in Ukraine.
Because he didn't go to East Palestine, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Where Governor Mike DeWine, who happens to be a Republican,
yes,
didn't really ask FEMA for help until last week.
Yeah. And also, the trains are a bit of a problem there, I
that Biden had already offered.
Yeah.
By the way.
Right. Obviously, you make the offer, and but these days Republicans
did not take him up on the offer.
There's nothing you can do. You could,
but the federal government had already responded.
Yeah.
Within hours, the White House said in a fact sheet they released, the EPA was there with a team. Department of Transportation was there immediately. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has been coordinating with the State Emergency Center, although FEMA didn't actually go in until, I think, this week, because DeWine didn't request it.
Yeah. And, there's some of those Republicans are as big into refusing to admit federal authorities unless they're requested as they are into not requesting them in the first place.
So you've got Andy Biggs and Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Traitor Greene screaming about how he supports Ukraine more than he supports white MAGA Americans.
Okay.
I mean, they don't say white MAGA Americans, but that's what they mean.
Well, that seems like a tact. I mean, they feel, I guess they're forced into doing that because there's nothing else for them to do. But I imagine most normal people probably, that's not going to work. But there's lots of crazies, obviously. And I did see, I think one of Marjorie Traitor Greene's early attempts was also to insinuate that Biden had somehow abandoned America by going to Ukraine because, there's no returning, obviously. We only bought a one-way ticket. It's really dumb. You know how it is with trains.
And Kevin Hearn says he thinks he went to Ukraine because Hunter Biden's business dealings. Which... Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, they can come up with anything, obviously. And they were stuck for something to find some bad angle to it. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll see how even MAGA troops, if I was interested in what they thought, and I would be interested to know whether less than 100% of them actually bought that, just to know. Like, is there something that's too dumb for, your average MAGA news reader to say, I hate Biden, but that isn't right. That's not true. That's stupid. But who knows? Well, it depends.
I don't know what I would do with the information.
Getting their news from Hunter Carlson?
Yeah. Tucker. Oh, yeah. Well, who knows? He could be making anything up, but we now know that to be the case.
Yes. I mean, knowingly making it up.
Yeah. That was astonishing.
To his fellow anchors, he's making it up.
Yeah. I was particularly surprised by the stock thing.
These people are now objectively pro-Putin.
Yeah.
They are. It is the Russian wing of the Republican Party, which is most of them.
That seems to be a thing. I don't know where that came from, and
Donald Trump.
Well, yes, that's true. I guess so, but yeah, it just seemed like it was so unlikely to succeed, just because so many years of conditioning of being anti-Soviet and anti-Russian. For Republicans, that used to be a core thing for them. And I found it difficult to believe that one person's personal business greed could turn them all into that. But I guess they either all got deals or they didn't, maybe none of them were students of history. That's entirely possible. Oh, I didn't realize we were traditionally anti-Russian. I did not know that. Someone should have told me that. I should have read a book. But I can't quite explain it.
We go back to, I think there's one person. Two people Putin pays.
Oh,
there's
yes.
Two people.
Yeah, we never talk about the other one anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, Donald Trump. And, Kevin McCarthy's dumb, but he's not that dumb.
Yeah. They must.
He knew way back when, and they had that private little discussion. You've talked about it an awful lot. You and I have talked about it a lot among House leadership and the GOP about how, Russia was doing really, really horrible things, and they were doing it to Ukraine.
Yeah.
They were aware of that pre-Donald Trump's presidency.
True.
It was a concern for them, and then they just decided to zip it.
Yeah.
Because we're family.
Right.
And can't say that stuff in public.
Even then, I mean, they were a little bit divided in that at least two of them there, I think Kathy McMorris Rogers and Paul Ryan, argued a little bit about whether the United States was, in fact, opposed to the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes.
Ryan was under the impression, of course, because we're Republicans, we're always anti-Russian aggression. The only people standing up to it is us. And McMorris Rogers saying, but we're not doing anything about it. And then the conversation kind of, at the time, I guess, people thought it was inexplicable that it shifted somehow to Russia paying Trump, and they just figured McCarthy blurted this thing out. But he may have blurted out the reason and the explanation why Ryan assumed Russians were, or that the Republicans were still anti-Russian, but learned in the course of the conversation that they were not. And then I guess the unspoken part of it was there's two people I think Putin pays, but maybe we could get him to pay more of us. I guess it must have been the yeah, that's why we're not going to talk about this any further. Because that's where they are now. I mean, maybe that's it.
Ding, ding. Hey, not a bad idea.
You missed the point of what I said. What I meant was, I think there's only two people that Putin is paying. And look at how many of us are here in this room. How come we're not getting paid off by the Russians? I don't know. But they did they called a close to the conversation before he could get around to that, I guess. But now they all go to Moscow for July 4th. They're pro-Russian invasion, and they hate it when the American president helps a pro-Western emerging democracy in Central Europe try to emerge from Russia's shadow and sphere of influence.
And by the way, Putin has declared Russia will suspend participation in New START nuclear arms treaty. So there you go.
Well,
that's the latest news, the hottest news from Mark Sumner at Daily Kos.
Well, yeah, that's, I guess, unsurprising, and who knows whether you could conclude a treaty about nuclear arms with Vladimir Putin, and what would you have? You know, a piece of paper with his name on it. You could sell that on eBay.
Putin announced this in a speech this morning, in which there was approximately 30 yards between he and the audience.
Oh, okay.
Literally. I am not exaggerating.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 20 yards.
Oh, okay. Well then. But yeah, I understand he puts this sort of distance between himself and everybody else. We saw it at even in the one-on-one talks, sitting at the end of these comically long tables. Is this, you think, part of his effort? Is it the distance a security issue or
I am tweeting
medical?
The picture at you. This is just, it's his paranoia. It's entirely his paranoia.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's that, and Greg has been talking about. He's like, there's some medical issues here too. He seems to have a tremor of sorts with his feet.
Yeah. Did he share that video with you?
He didn't show me the video, but
it was like his feet were tap dancing while he was sitting in a conversation with, I can't remember which other world leader, having this conversation.
Fred
and
Astaire,
his feet were just.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Very strange.
That's kind of bizarre. This is a pastime Americans have had for a long time. We're back to Kremlinology, trying to read these, guess at what does this signal mean, and why was he tap dancing? I'm not sure about that.
Okay, I'm looking at the picture again and revising. I think it's like 15 yards.
Oh, okay.
If I'm trying to impose an American football field on this.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Well, that's...
anyway, Kremlinology, yes.
All of our studies are back in vogue. We have a
Republican Party that is objectively pro-Putin.
Mm-hmm. And, they are borrowing a lot of ideology and some organizational skills from him, too. I've been thinking in the past couple of days about... someone must have put it this way in an article or something, but just thinking about the relationship between the political far right and the militias, and realizing, this is essentially a military arm of a political party, which puts, just oddly enough, the Republican Party of the United States here in unusual company, along with Sinn Féin and the IRA, and Hezbollah, which has its own paramilitary wing as well. And we now have Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, 3%ers, etc. But they show up to, I mean, if it weren't for the fact that they had all shown up on January 6th and actually tried to overthrow the government, you'd say it was hyperbole. And talk about your, the metaphor doesn't hold up anymore, but the boiling frog sort of situation here. Like, we've walked right into a situation where one of the two major parties in the United States now maintains a full open paramilitary wing.
Right. And when Marjorie Traitor Greene is tweeting things like she did yesterday, it's time for a divorce between red and blue America, take that seriously.
Yeah.
Because divorce equals civil war.
That's
the way
they've
got a lot of guns.
Yeah. They do, and they love to show them, and they love to threaten people with them for those purposes. I guess I was reading a story yesterday about the new Michigan Republican Party chair, who was elected, I guess, over the weekend in their state convention, but sort of tracing their steps backwards. First of all, an even kookier person than usual. It was the person who had just run for and lost Secretary of State in Michigan. Is it Cuomo? Was that her last name?
Yes.
And
Laura wrote this up over the weekend, I think.
So that she was actually the crazier of the two leading contenders and didn't get the Trump endorsement, but she overcame the Trump-endorsed candidate, who was the guy who just lost the Attorney General race to Perno. And apparently the loss was attributed to his acknowledging that he had lost his race, whereas Cuomo would refuse to concede. But I read this other story about I guess what was the making of this election, in that determining who gets to go to the state convention to vote for the new chair. Usually the county and congressional district Republican chairs are the delegates to this thing. And the story of the Hillsdale County Republican operation, where one of the local, Proud Boy affiliated type Republicans had gotten himself elected chair by posting armed guards at the door of the county convention and turning away known moderates from the door.
Yeah.
Like, that's just plain military. That's just a Hezbollah operation. Why is it such an extreme organization? Because if you're moderate, they'll threaten you and turn you away or kill you or purge you from the party. And lo and behold, then they send those people as delegates to the state convention and elect the looniest person ever. So, it's kind of dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, it's not white nationalism in the case of Cuomo. Is that how it's pronounced? Because
I don't know,
she's black.
Yes, that's true.
But she also says things like, my goal number one as a Christian is to bring people to Christ, and secondarily to save our country. In speaking to a far-right patriot group, she went into more detail.
Oh, yes.
When we start talking about the spiritual reality of the demonic forces, it's like, oh my God, this is crazy. We can't go there, Daramo said.
Yeah,
no,
she was right
it's
at that
like,
point.
Did you read the Bible? Didn't Jesus perform exorcisms? Scriptures are clear. And so if we're not operating as through the spirit realities of the world exist, we are going to fail every time.
And I mean, I don't even know what that means exactly. I mean, she believes demons are real. I can see that. But
she believes demons are real. She believes apparently demons are running the Democratic Party.
Oh, well, everybody believes that. I mean, all of MAGA tells us that they're, that's QAnon. Straight from QAnon.
Well, I'd assume, or
thereabouts.
She's her own kind of thing.
Her own anon, I guess. But I mean, I don't even understand the coded language, which I guess is, winks to insiders from her Christian right-wing churches. Spirit realities. Like, what does that combination of words mean? That's not a thing.
So if we're not operating as through the spirit realities of the world exist, if we're not operating as though the spirit realities of the world exist,
Ghosts? I don't know what that. I mean, that's the sort of thing that I guess church members recognize as a combination of words that make some kind of sense to them. And these things occasionally emerge every once in a while into the mainstream when somebody blurts them out. But this one usually they're more harmless than that. But I believe that demons populate the world. Yeah, but we were just told, Michigan, they're doing great. There's the first Democratic trifecta since the 80s in Michigan.
Yeah, if it was Idaho, if it was Mississippi,
right,
if it was South Carolina,
right. We would be thinking maybe differently of it, and maybe we figure that this is going nowhere because there's a Democratic trifecta there. But it's a little. I guess if you're going to start showing up at polling places with guns and turning away moderates, you just start turning up and turning away Democrats, and then you don't have a trifecta anymore. And what are you going to do about it? Because we'll shoot you if you protest. I don't know. So
yeah, let's just hope that trifecta of Democratic leadership has really, really, really good security.
Yeah. Right. You have to trust in that. And then, of course, when those guys show up and threaten them and then get arrested, then they say, see, they're hypocrites. They say they want to take away guns, but their security has guns. And they have to, because you keep showing up with guns. Ordinarily, they wouldn't have to be going about with armed security all the time, but that's on you. But, that doesn't faze them any.
No.
Well, at least they're not here in Washington for the week. They're home terrorizing people in their home districts instead.
Yes.
Ugh. Well,
ugh.
They do come back.
Come back to our regular fight.
Mm-hmm.
Next week of debt ceiling, which, yay Biden.
Yeah.
He's not giving, and he's not giving any indication of giving. And so far he's got a Senate Democratic conference that's agreeing with Manchin, doing Manchin, but everybody's ignoring him.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so far so good. He's holding on, and it's really been good PR the last couple of weeks. It looks like they're setting
really
up for him to win. So
it really has. So
yeah,
and he really has set Republicans back on their heel. Did you see Rick Scott's amended Compact for America, whatever he calls the thing?
No, has he? He's edited it.
Said, okay, everything sunsets. He left that in, and then he wrote in, except Social Security, Medicare, and this was very strange, the Navy.
It's like written in crayon.
Specifically, the Navy.
The Navy, not the other Space Force.
No, he left out the other forces.
I can't believe he left out Space Force. Is he? But I don't know. Is he a Navy?
I have no idea.
It
was the oddest thing.
Huh. That is odd. And it was typed, not just handwritten.
I don't know.
That's unusual. Wow. Okay. The Navy. Well, Army, you sunset. Does that mean the Army sunsets every year? Is that what that's supposed to mean?
Well, yeah, you would have to guess that. He was pretty specific.
Huh.
Social Security, Medicare, and the Navy.
Wow. Well, that's tough, but it's good for the Navy. The Navy must be happy. I wonder how they got that done.
If Rick Scott's ever president, they're saved.
Yeah, right. Did they win the Army-Navy game or something? Is this a prize? I can't figure out what that is supposed to be. But good on him, I guess, for understanding, okay, political pressure is what it is. I'm going to go back and exempt Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. There's a
not
usual.
Medicaid.
Oh, not Medicaid. He didn't.
Not Medicaid. And this is important to note too. In the ongoing fight, the real push is going to be to try to destroy Medicaid.
Yeah, I should have guessed that was the case. I was really just trying to sneak that in like the Navy and see if I could get it through. And then, it says that? Oh, okay. My mistake.
That's one that, because...
Navy. Doesn't even sound like anything else. Like maybe it was a dictation mistake. All right. Well, I mean...
It's Rick Scott.
Sure. That's a great story. I don't really...
It's just to say... That guy's kind of kooky.
I guess so. I mean, I'll take it. I don't want to vote on the Navy every year or sunset it. I guess you won me over.
That would be an interesting thing. How do you work the defense authorization bill if you have to do?
Yeah.
I guess you just do a separate Navy defense authorization bill.
I guess, but yeah, I don't know. That's bizarre. I mean, I would have expected to see the armed forces as a whole appended on it, as long as you're making a list and just throw anything else in there. I don't know what I can't think of other things that they would like to protect, that they normally like protecting, but the armed forces, that's the phrase. But then, all right, I'll look into it. That's kind of bizarre. Where did you find that? I mean,
I'm glad just
the regular old newspaper.
Google
Rick
Scott Medicare, Social Security, Navy, and you'll find it.
I guess so, right. It's true, and it's out there, and that's all you need to know. So I'll try and find it.
I'm glad I could bring you a giggle at the end of our time together.
I'm baffled. I mean, wow. I'm going to spend the rest of the day worrying about the country.
And you also have to go read the story about how Joe Biden got into Ukraine. It's
right. Maybe that's it. There was no naval forces involved, so they're okay. But we're going to defund all armies and trains and, Boy, okay, I am puzzled. So it gives me something to think about for the rest of the day. Thank you very much, Joan. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
And, if you find any explanation for it within the next week, hold on to it. Let us know on Tuesday.
When Congress is back and doing the things Congress does.
Yeah, and there's some weird things. Well, thanks very much, and we'll check in with you later. Time for us to give it all away now, and we'll talk to you again Tuesday. But now, all you people can stick around and talk to Justice Putnam in the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which comes up next after this message about me.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, Justice puts it interestingly here. If you watched Biden in Kiev, you watched history. And then on the rest of the menu for the day, a shrinking water supply will mean more fallow fields in California's San Joaquin Valley. And let's see. Oh, look, a record number of guns intercepted by U.S. airport security.